Well, howdy y'all, welcome back to Woodworking 101 for Beginners. In today's video we're going to be covering what you need to start your woodworking business. This is a question that a lot of people think of whenever they're wanting to start a business, no matter what it is. What is going to be my startup costs? And I'm here to tell you and to give you some good news that it's not going to cost you a whole lot of money. But what if I told you you could start up a woodworking business for no more than $350? This is shooting high. I don't know other people's prices around the country and around the world, so I want to make sure I shoot a little bit higher, but it could even be less than that. What's very interesting is when you go onto YouTube and you go and you research woodworking projects and you find a lot of videos out there, including mine, where you'll go in there and you'll see that they have table saws and they have miter saws and they have planers and they have joiners and they have band saws and they have drill presses and they have dust extractors, dust collectors, all these tools that if you were to buy all at once would cost a mini fortune. But what a lot of people don't understand is when they're watching people on YouTube, including myself, this right here is 7 years worth of woodworking. This is certainly not how I started. What you see on YouTube is the finished product, not the journey. And so when you watch these woodworkers that have all these tools, they did not start out that way. And so you don't have to worry about, oh, I have to buy a saw stop, or oh, I have to buy a Festool Capex miter saw, or I have to buy a band saw. A lot of these tools, they're very, very helpful later on down the road, but especially when you're starting out as a beginner, these tools are really not necessary at all. So in this video, I'm going to give you 4 tools that I would recommend to start woodworking. First off, I'll start off with a little bit of my story of where I started, because you see this, and this is not where I started. I actually started in a 2-car garage with my brother. We started a little woodworking business where we refinished furniture and we built some furniture as well. But we had no more than 4 tools. These are the ones that I'm going to recommend to you, and then I'm going to give you a couple alternatives too. But we had no workbenches, we worked on the floor, we couldn't drive at the time. I was 14 years old when I began, 13 or 14. So we started pretty minimally, and you can see 7 years later how much, the workshop has grown. I now have a miter station, I have, workstations and stuff, but you can tell I'm still using a job site table saw. I'm using a cheap band saw from Win. If you know anything about Win, they're a great tool company. They do make really good quality tools, but they have a really cheap price to them. And so obviously they're not super powerful. But as you can tell, even after 7 years, I'm still on my woodworking journey. I still don't have the most professional tools like you see a lot of people on YouTube have, which, they've been in the journey a lot longer than I have. So what would be the 4 tools that I'd recommend? Number 1 is you're going to need some sort of saw. What we started out and what I would recommend would be a jigsaw. This is what we started out with. I'm a big advocate of use what you have. So if you already have a circular saw or you have something like that, go with that. The reason I recommend this, if you're starting out completely from scratch and have no tools, circular saw is certainly a good way to go if you're just going to be cutting straight cuts. But why I would say a jigsaw is a little bit better is not because it's perfect at cutting straight. It's not really meant for that. But if you're wanting to do other things than just cut straight, then this is a really good piece, because this is going to cut you circles. It's going to cut you different shapes. It's going to cut you, all that you really need with that. That's why I would recommend this. This is just a cheap Chicago Electric from Harbor Freight. I still have it today. You can see it's collecting dust. I don't really use it much anymore. This is not the original that we had. I can't remember the original jigsaw that we had, but it was like a Ryobi or something like that. But this is going to get a lot of jobs done, and that's why I'd recommend to start out with a jigsaw. Now, some people are saying, yeah, but if it's not going to cut straight, if I'm going to be building a piece of furniture, I need to cut straight. Yes, absolutely. This is where our second tool came in handy, the speed square. Now, what's so great about these is you take this piece and you put it onto your piece of wood, and that creates a fence for you to ride your jigsaw upon. So like you'll ride your jigsaw up against that, and that will give you a nice straight cut even with the jigsaw. And this also goes for circular saws as well. If you're using that, this is a perfect tool. Now what I would say with this is if you want to pick one of these up, don't go for the most expensive, but also don't opt for the cheapest. The cheapest are usually plastic, and you really want something that's going to last you for a little while. And this metal one, someone gave this to me. I can't remember how I got this. I know I didn't pay for it. I know that somebody gave it to me, but it doesn't have to be anything special. It's Empire, so I assume that it's Lowe's. But just a nice quality. It doesn't have to be great quality, but just a good speed square. All right, so the third tool on my list is going to be the drill. They're a very, very valuable tool within the shop. We have two identical ones of these. This is just an old Makita drill that my dad had that he just gave to us. This may be the exact one from 7 years ago when I first started woodworking. Again, we have an identical one. I don't know if that's it or if this is the original, but one of these are the original from when I started woodworking for the first time. And it's still running strong, and it's been wonderful. But why I would say a drill is because this can do a lot for you, especially when you're building furniture or you're putting something together and you would need to fasten something together. This is not only going to drill your pilot holes, but this is also going to, this can also drive some screws as well. What's cool about this as well is if you need to sand in a tight place, you get a drill bit, get some painter's tape and a piece of sandpaper, you wrap the sandpaper around the drill bit and then put some tape on the end, and then you can just go in there and this spins, and so you can get into those hard places by using this drill. I mean, it's so versatile. It's a really good tool. I would definitely recommend this. You don't have to get a Makita because Makitas are expensive, but just a good quality drill. Alrighty, the last one on my list, which is certainly not least. Okay, so we have something that's going to cut our wood, we have something that's going to make sure that we cut our wood straight, and then we have something that's going to fasten our wood together. Now we need something that's going to make it smooth, and that is the orbital sander. Now when we first began woodworking, we didn't have an orbital sander. We had actually a plywood sander. If you don't know what that is, it looks like an orbital sander, but the bottom is square. And so all it does is just vibrate. It doesn't spin like this orbital sander, but I would definitely recommend an orbital sander over a plywood sander, especially for building pieces of furniture and stuff. This is a irreplaceable item. It doesn't have to be anything expensive. I used to buy ones at Walmart. They cost me like $19.99. And they lasted me 2 years. They'd eventually die after the second year. But this one is just a little bit more expensive. I paid double for it. I paid $40 for this one, and it's been a really good one. Quite inexpensive, but you don't have to get one like this. You can go anywhere from the $19.99 to $199, depending on your budget and what you want to do. But what I like about this one is it has variable speed, though I don't really use that much. It's definitely not something that most people would use, but I have the option if I wanted to. But what's so great about this is why it's called a random orbital sander, is because it just spins at random. It's not gear driven, it's not anything like that. So when you put it onto the piece of wood, you'll see it'll slowly start turning and then go faster. And if you move it, it may start going the other way or whatever. I don't know exactly how it works, but it's definitely a good tool to have to make sure your projects have a nice finish on them. Alright, so I've given you the 4 tools that I would recommend when starting out. So how much is this going to cost? So really depending on the brand that you go with, depending on the quality, depending on your budget, it can really go anywhere from $150 to $350. And that's about the range. Obviously, if you want to go to even more expensive, obviously, then the price will go up there. But that's your general rule, I would say. It's going to cost you to start up with tools about $150 to $350, which is really not bad for startup cost. It's very low risk, especially if you go with lower quality. I would definitely not recommend going too low quality just to save money. But you want to make sure that your woodworking, it gets the job done, it gets it done efficiently, and it gets it done diligently. And you don't want something that's going to mess up your project. So I would definitely not opt for the most inexpensive, but I would also not go, as to say, go with really, really high quality ones, because you're most likely not going to be staying with these tools forever. So those are the 4 tools that I recommend. Now, there's a trap that I think a lot of people come into, not just woodworkers, but any business. You begin to start looking at other people's shops, and it's like, oh, well, it's time for me to upgrade because I see, these people have these kind of tools and I want that. But it's a very slippery slope here, because I fell into this trap more than once, to where I'll go and I'll watch a woodworker, and it's like, man, I've been woodworking for 7 years. I think it's time for me to start looking more like a professional woodworker and buy more professional tools. And this is a very slippery slope, because this breeds discontentment. And discontentment really hinders the joy of working. It really hinders your joy while you're working. It hinders your excitedness to work. It really disables you, really. When you begin to look at everybody else's tools and say, hey, I need this is going to make my life better, this is going to make it easier, this is going to make it more efficient, which those things can be true, absolutely, but you really need to be careful of the trap of discontentment. Here's what the Bible says about it. Okay, so in 1 Timothy 6:6-10, it says, "But godliness with contentment is great gain, for we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world." So here's what it's saying is, if we have godliness and we are content with what we have, then that is very, very great gain. It says, we brought nothing into this world. We came into this world with absolutely nothing. When we die, we're going to leave with absolutely nothing. We cannot take it with us. It continues to go on and says, "But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, and into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction." Okay, so I look at this and it's saying, with food and clothing, with these we can be content. We will be content, it says, actually. But it says, "But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation, into a snare, and into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction." And when I read this verse and I'm applying it to, let's say, our businesses here, they fall into temptation, into a snare, and into many senseless and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. And I think that it's destruction not only in your work ethic, I think it's destruction in your spiritual state. I think it's destruction even financially too, because if we're too hasty, we begin spending all of our money on these tools because we desire it so much, that can come to financial destruction as well if we're not careful. And so we really need to examine ourselves whenever we say, hey, I think it's time for me to get a new tool, or it's time for me to upgrade this tool that I have. We really need to use discernment on what we should buy and what we shouldn't buy. The verse continues to say, "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs." A lot of people say, oh, you see, money is the root of all evil. It doesn't say that money is the root of all evil. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. This is what causes a lot of evils, is because people see the money and they will do whatever they can to get to that money, even if it's sin, even if it's evil, even if it's... And so this is why the love of money causes that. But it goes the same for earthly possessions too. If we're so focused on earthly possessions, if we desire earthly possessions so much, and I think that's why it says the money, because money buys us those possessions. But if we really look at the possessions too, it says right here, "It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs." People fall away from the faith because they are searching for the things of the world. They were seeking earthly treasures. They were seeking, and it's so easy to do that. Because it's tangible, you can see it. But what we should really be more focused upon is the spiritual treasures. Whenever we die and we go, we're gonna, it doesn't matter, we could build up to where we have a whole warehouse of just professional tools, but if we died that night, none of it's gonna mean anything. So if we were discontent, we're gonna be held accountable before God. So we really need to focus, we really need to be careful and be cautious of, again, because I fell into this trap where you look at other people's shops and you just desire that. You want their shop. You want the tools that they have. You want the skills that they have. You want and this is all just a part of the journey. It was what I was saying at the beginning of this video. You see the end result. You don't see the journey. And everybody started somewhere. And they didn't have all that, years ago. Just like I didn't have all this years ago. But the Lord has richly blessed me with the things that I have. And I'm very happy with them. And it wasn't until the Lord broke me of, because I was in that state where it's like, I don't even really want to woodwork because I just can't produce anything that is half as magnificent as these other people because I don't have their tools. And that's simply not the case. Everything that I make within my shop, I can do with these tools. Like this table saw, it's not the most powerful thing in the world. It vibrates a lot. It's a job site table saw. But the thing is it gets what I need it to get done. And, instead of looking at it as like, Lord, I need a new table saw, how about thank you, Lord, for this table saw? Because I got this table saw for free. The Lord provided this for me. My neighbor kindly blessed me to be able to just keep it in my shop. I've had it in my shop for years now. And I just use it all the time. But yeah, before my attitude was, Lord, I need a new table saw. But now it's, Lord, thank you for this table saw, because you didn't have to give me this table saw. I could not have a table saw right now, but I'm very thankful that I have this to be able to use, and what I'm wanting to get done with it gets done with it. I don't have to have a greater powered one. I don't have to have a saw stop or a grizzly or a Powermatic or anything like that in order to get what I need to get done. And so learning to be content with what we have in the moment, and the Lord will provide later. If the woodworking business continues to go on, if the Lord blesses it, He's going to give you more tools, and you're probably going to buy some too. There's nothing wrong with upgrading. There's nothing wrong with buying a new tool, but you need to make sure what's your motive behind it. So what is the rule so you can be confident that you're being a good steward whenever you make an upgrade or whenever you make or when you purchase a new tool? I think that you really need to use God's discernment, because again, this is His money and He's giving you stewardship over it. So what you do with it, whether good or bad, is up to you. But if we're really seeking to glorify God, then obviously we want to be a good steward of it. So how can we be a good steward of it? When do we know is the time to buy a new tool? I don't think that there's necessarily a rule for it. I think that it all depends on you and your growth, how much the Lord is blessing your business. From how we started out with a jigsaw. We built a couple pieces of furniture, sold it, and we're like, okay, well, the Lord has blessed it. We're going to take some of that money that He has blessed us with, and we're going to buy a used miter saw with it. And it was just a Chicago Electric miter saw. It wasn't anything fancy. But we decided that because this is something that we're really getting into, and that we are selling pieces of furniture, it's going to make it so much faster and make our work better for the customers if we upgraded to a miter saw. And so I don't think that there's a formula to whether something. I think that it really ends up to discernment. Why do I want this tool? To make sure that you are really seeking your heart to find out, is this an envy issue? Do I see somebody else have this and I want that? Or is it because the tool that I have is cutting inaccurately? I'm starting to make a lot of these things, and some of it's crooked and I don't like that. I want to make sure that I give the customer a good quality product that's not crooked. Then that is a pretty good reason to want to buy a new tool. Does that mean that you need to buy the most expensive tool? No, you don't need to buy the most expensive tool just because you're upgrading. Don't opt out of the idea of buying used tools too. This miter saw right here is used. I bought it a couple of years ago. It was somebody who used it a couple times for some trim in his house. Decided he didn't want it anymore, so I picked it up for like $125 or $150. I think it was $125, but it may have been $150. So don't opt out of being a good steward in that way too. If you do need to make an upgrade, shop used too. It will certainly save you some money. Not all tools should you buy used, but some of the bigger ones like table saws and miter saws and stuff, those are pretty good ones to buy used. But it's really up to you and what you believe is the right thing to do. I can't make the decision for you. That's just something that, for me, I could upgrade to a better table saw, but I just don't think that that's the best option for me. Right now, I don't think that's being a good steward of God's money, especially because I don't need it. I don't need a better table saw. This one is working just fine for what I'm doing as of now. Doesn't mean I won't ever upgrade, but as of right now, for what I'm making and what I'm doing with it, it's been more than enough to get the job done. Alrighty, y'all. Well, that's all the thoughts I have on that. I didn't want to go too in depth because I really want to leave the decision up to you and what you feel like the Lord is wanting you to do. Make sure that before any purchase, you ask the Lord, okay, Lord, search my heart, see if this is something that am I buying this out of envy, or am I buying it out of wanting to look better, or am I buying this truly because it's time? I'm sure there's other people who would disagree with me on the tools that they would recommend to buy first, but the reasons I really chose those tools first is because, one, when you're entering into something like this, in your mind, it's like, okay, this is something that I want to get into. But when you really start getting into it, you really find out, okay, am I really enjoying building furniture or making decor? Because sometimes you'll get into something, it's like, actually this is not something that I want to do. So I want to make sure that the tools that you get are pretty low cost. I want to make sure that so when you get into it and you're like, this is not something that I really want to get into, you can always try to sell those tools and get some of that money back. But you're not investing in a huge roster of tools that you're going to end up not wanting afterwards. Number two, they get all the beginner woodworking jobs done. Again, those are the tools that I personally used when I started, and it was more than enough for what I needed, and I was able to sell some furniture with those tools. So that was another reason I chose those. Again, there are alternatives. If you don't have a jigsaw and you have a circular saw, don't go buy a jigsaw. use the circular saw. But if you're starting completely from scratch, those would be the tools that I would recommend. So anyway, all that's it for this video. I hope that it helped you, I hope that it blessed you, and I hope that you're seeking the Lord through all of this, as He's the one who gives you the strength and the power and those skills to do woodworking or to start up your business or whatever. Make sure that He's the forefront of your mind whenever you go into anything that you're wanting to do, because it's Him. He's the one who's going to give you the increase. We can only do what we can do, but the rest is up to the Lord. So anyway, y'all, thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already and you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button, as I have more videos like this coming out in this series. Until next time, y'all, keep swimming upstream.